From our studios in Rockefeller Center, here is Stone Phillips.
She was playing in the backyard when it happened. A neighbor's dog suddenly attacked the little girl. What her father did to retaliate would land him in court, facing criminal charges and possible prison time. Did he go too far? That's the question for the jury, and tonight, for you. You'll have the chance to tell us what you think as our interactive Dateline Court TV story unfolds. Here's Hoda Kotb.
In the quiet town of Gainesville, Georgia last spring, Ken Cannon faced a dilemma, whether to trust authorities to protect his child from danger or take matters into his own hands. He put his trust in the law.
You thought the law was going to do what the law does and take care of it?
Sure. I had total trust in the system. I wouldn't believe anyone would just let the bomb sit there and wait for it to explode before they do anything about it.
It all started 11 days before with his wife's urgent call to 911.
Our daughter got hurt and she's got blood everywhere.
Okay.
And
how did she get hurt?
I don't know. I can't get it out of her. It's something to do with the big dog in the backyard.
Ken Cannon's 9-year-old daughter Amber and her younger brother were playing out back, and Bud, the neighbor's German Shepherd Husky, was chained up to this tree in the middle of their shared backyard. One minute, Amber was skipping over and petting Bud like she had many times before. The next minute, the dog pounced on top of her and attacked. Linda Carpenter, the dog's owner, heard Amber's cries from her driveway.
I couldn't believe that Bud was biting her. It was such a shock. And I ran over, grabbed him by the collar, and pulled him off of her.
You had to yank him off of her?
And I pulled him off of her, yes, and told her to run.
Amber scrambled home, her face and clothing soaked with blood. Her mother, Renee, was trembling at the sight of her.
I was panicked. I thought that I could handle just about anything, but seeing my child with all of that, it was just too much.
Renee didn't wait for the ambulance. She raced Amber to the hospital. Her head was cut open, bite marks across the top of her scalp, puncture wounds on her arm and chest. When Ken Cannon arrived at the hospital, he hardly recognized his little girl.
She had just blood all over her, just everywhere. If it would have got her rolled over and got her to her neck, it could have killed her very quickly.
Ken Cannon was beside his daughter at her hospital bed, holding her hand and trying to calm her. At one point, she asked her dad to do something for her.
She asked me to go home and kill the dog because she was scared of it.
And what did you say to her when she asked you that?
Well, I told her that I couldn't kill the dog because there were procedures in reference to calling animal control and that they were responsible to respond to it and come out and get the animal.
At that point, the Cannons were not worried. They were confident that animal control, less than a mile away, would come that night to remove the dog. In fact, the dog's owner, Linda Carpenter, had already called animal control, and they told her she could leave the dog chained up outside over the weekend, but she would have to bring it in on Monday so it could be checked for rabies. The Cannons didn't know that when they pulled into their driveway after a long night at the hospital, and they were shocked to see the dog still tied up out back. Amber was so terrified she wouldn't step out of the car.
She's just climbing back into the seat. She's afraid Buddy's going to be loose or get loose and come back after her. And basically, I had to just pick her up, hold her, and take her inside.
The next day, Ken got on the phone 3 different times with Animal Control 911, demanding the dog be removed and making threats. The first at 12:04 in the afternoon.
They should have came out after this dog. It's still tied up in my backyard, so I'm going to go out here and shoot it.
The next, about 40 minutes later at 12:46.
I'm a patient man, but my dog with 18 stitches in her head and the dog's sitting out in my backyard. I'm getting impatient.
And then at 12:59, the director of animal control called him back.
I'm just asking you, please, sir, the law won't let me come out there under these exact circumstances and just take the dog. Right.
Animal control says it decides case by case whether to remove a dog immediately. Usually those cases involve death or severe injury. But the director told Ken that even though his daughter had been mauled, the law allows the dog to be temporarily quarantined at home as long as it's current on its rabies shots. Linda Carpenter assured Animal Control that her dog was vaccinated. Ken's disgust with the system was bubbling over. To make matters worse, his daughter was having horrible nightmares and wouldn't leave the house all weekend long.
She pretty much just slept in the bed with me. And she tried a couple times to take a nap in her room, and he would bark and it would scare her.
But Amber was relieved knowing it wouldn't go on too much longer. Linda Carpenter told the Cannons and Animal Control that once the dog left, it was never coming back.
I have a plan to have Bud euthanized.
Why was that one of the first thoughts you had? I'm going to have my dog put to sleep.
Because I would never own a dog that would bite a child.
Linda says she felt terrible about the attack, and she and Ken Cannon were not only neighbors, but good friends. They had known each other for 30 years. But days after the dog bite, things were different. There were no more neighborly chats. Linda and the Cannons were not speaking, and Amber was becoming more and more anxious, waiting for Bud to be picked up.
She kept asking when were they going to come and get him, and we told her on Monday.
And on Monday, Linda did take the dog to be checked for rabies, and it would be quarantined for the next 8 days. But despite Linda's promise to put Bud to sleep, Ken wasn't convinced that she would go through with it, and it looked like he may have been right. Just 11 days after the attack, Bud was back, tied up in the very same spot where he attacked Amber.
I was amazed. Linda told Amber, you'll never see that dog again, I promise. And I was not going to allow that dog to be there when Amber pulled up in the yard.
The dog had only been there for 10 minutes when Ken went in the house, got this automatic rifle, and with Bud in the crosshairs, he fired. Linda was on the phone when suddenly she heard the crack of gunfire and ran outside. She was shocked at what she saw.
Just seeing him lying there, dead. You know, with the chain still around his neck. It wasn't like he was loose. He wasn't running. The fact that someone would have the heart to do something like that, to shoot a chained dog.
What did you lose that day?
I lost a friend.
And he was defenseless, right? I mean, there was nothing...
He was defenseless, yes.
Linda says she saw Ken calmly get into his truck and drive off.
This is an emergency. Somebody just shot my dog dead. That's what's wrong.
I couldn't believe he did it. I really couldn't believe that he would do something like that.
Linda says he especially should have known better. You see, Ken Cannon was more than just an ordinary parent. He was an 8-year veteran of the Gainesville Police Force. Now he'd be suspended from the force with pay. Officer Cannon spent his life defending the law. Now he faced criminal charges, cruelty to an animal, and illegally discharging a firearm. If convicted, he'd face up to 2 years in prison and the end of his professional career. So, was Officer Cannon a father protecting his daughter, or a hot-headed cop who took matters into his own hands? 5 months later, it would be up to a jury to decide.
I was acting as a parent. I was taking care of a problem, protecting.
Simple as that.
Sure.
What do you think? Was Ken Cannon justified in killing his neighbor's dog? You can log on right now and tell us at dateline.msnbc.com. When we come back, Officer Cannon heads to court.